Hi, my name is Sarah Markos from Susan Makes, and today I'm going to teach you how to make this really cute bursting heart pillow cover. It's a tutorial that I have on my blog, and mine is getting a little bit old and I wanted to remake it today, so I wanted to show you how I made mine. And we're going to make a new one, and I'm going to take you through the whole process, start to finish, from how to make these cute little wedges, how to make your heart burst, and how to go about designing the whole thing so it looks just like you want it. And then just a heads up, I'm just going to show you how to make the pillow front today, and it will be up to you on how to finish the back of your pillow. To make this project, we are going to need a base fabric that we're going to put as our background for our pillow. You'll also need some fabric scraps or fat quarters. You don't have to use scraps, but I love this project because it's a great way to use up a lot of scraps. And then we're also going to use Heat and Bond Light. It's the sewable light version. It's just an iron-on adhesive that has a paper backing, and anything will really do if you have a fusible adhesive. As you can see, this has a shiny glue side and then a paper side, and we're going to glue this to the back of our fabric, peel off the paper, and then glue it to the fabric on the other side. So this is what we're going to use to fuse all those really cute wedges on. If you are using a simple quilting cotton for the background fabric, you're going to want to use a little bit of batting, enough for a front and a back to give your pillow cover just a little more stabilization. So the pillow form I use for this pillow is 18 inches square. So I'm going to use that same pillow form, so I want to make the same one. This one is finishing at 18 inches, so we're going to cut a square first, 18 and a half by 18 and a half, because I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now if you want to take a 1/2 inch seam allowance, you can cut it to 19 inches, but I'm just going to use the traditional quilting seam allowances for my pillow that I'm making. Next, I'm getting my fabric ready by pressing out all of my wrinkles. Cut your base fabric to 18.5 inches square using your rotary cutter and mat. Then you'll also use your fabric square as a template to cut out your batting. Even though my fabric is actually pretty substantial, quite a bit thicker than your traditional quilting cotton, I'm still going to use a layer of batting just to make it a little bit more structured. And I find that if you use a layer of batting when you're making your pillow covers, it just kind of gives your pillow just a little more of a finished professional look instead of a homemade look, and it doesn't let your pillow covers wrinkle as quickly. Now whenever I'm working with batting, I always use a spray to spray baste this batting to the piece, and so I'm going to use this 505 adhesive. I really like this because there is not a lot of overspray that happens, so I feel like I can spray it in the house and it doesn't get my work surface crazy messy, and it sticks really well, and I just find way better results using a spray basting than pin basting. Next, we're going to make a heart template that fits on the inside of our square. We want this heart template to be about 2.5 to 3 inches smaller than our square to allow the heart to burst. I'm going to make a template that's about 13 inches by 13 inches. To make the heart template, take 4 pieces of printer paper together, and then you'll need to cut it into a 13-inch square. I'm using my rotary cutter that I have designated for paper to trim it down to 13 inches on each side. If you don't have a rotary cutter designated for paper, I highly recommend it. Next, fold the square in half and draw a heart shape. You're going to want that heart shape to fill the entire square, so I'm just starting a couple of inches down from the top and going all the way around, and then come down to the bottom all the way to the point. And then you just make modifications until you get the shape that you like. Now let's cut out the template and compare it to our base fabric and see if it's the size that we want. So that's actually a great shape, but it won't give us too much room to burst. If you want it to be a little bit smaller, just trim off the extra until you get the size right. Okay, now I have mine about 3 inches in from each side, and that should work. Next, we're going to take our Heat and Bond light and we're going to trace the heart template onto the paper side of the Heat and Bond. And then just roughly cut out that heart without cutting on the line. The next thing we're going to do is section out this heart template into little wedges. And those little wedges are going to be what we fuse our fabric to make the heart. So we just start by drawing a little dot in the center, and then you'll use a ruler to draw a line that connects the outside of the heart to that center dot. And you can draw all the way across the center dot to the other side, or you can just come and meet it. You can really make the wedges however you want. Now, when I designed it the first time, I wanted my bottom point to not be split in half. So I made one wedge that kind of encompassed the bottom point entirely. But then I did split the top of the heart directly in half. Now, on my original pillow, I had 19 slices. And you can make as many or as few slices as you want. The smaller your slices, the less fabric will be visible on each slice. And as you're making your wedges, you want to remember to finish with an odd number. And then just continue drawing your wedges all the way around the heart. I would just focus on looking at the top, the widest part of the wedge, so that you can kind of get an idea of how large those pieces are, and maybe kind of eyeball them to be similar in size if you want. When you get to the end, count them up and see if you feel like you have enough. Feel free to erase any lines that you need to split the wedges in half and make an extra wedge piece. Remember, this is your design. It doesn't have to look like mine, and that's the fun part and the creative part of this project. Now, I decided I'm using 6 fabrics for this heart, and so I'm numbering with a large number on every wedge, 1 through 6, 1 through 6, until I get back to the beginning. As you can tell, I just have 17 wedges, and so each of my fabrics is going to be used 3 times except for one of them, and I'm fine with that. You'll also want to draw a smaller number on the inside telling you the order in which you're going to place them. I just drew a smaller number on each wedge so that I could put them back in the correct order after I had fused them to the fabric. So we have our heart all traced and the wedges are drawn. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut right along the edge of the outside heart to begin with. But hold on, as I'm cutting this out, I realized that I did not make the wedges into triangular pieces. So you have to grab that ruler and draw a line connecting the 2 ends at the top of each wedge to make it a straight line, to make it a full, complete triangle. Because we only want to be folding straight edges on these little wedges and not have to deal with any curves here. Okay, now we can cut up all our wedges. And as you cut them, just cut directly on the line and turn each of those little pieces into a little triangle. Okay, now's when our pieces are all going to get a little bit mixed up, and that's okay. Now for the fun part, choosing the fabric. Here are the fabrics I chose. I ended up skipping the scraps in search of more reds and fun florals because that's the kind of fabric I like. For this original one, I chose to use 7 fabrics. Whatever you want to do, the magic happens when all of these are repeated. So however many you decide to do, as long as they get repeated 2 or 3 times, it's going to look pretty. Okay, let's sort these little wedges into groups. Make a stack of 1s, 2s, 3s, etc. And then I'm going to grab my lineup of fabric and match my groups to the fabric that I want to fuse them to. Now we're going to fuse these wedges to the wrong side of our fabric pieces. As you place your wedges, you can choose to place them so that you can see the little parts of the fabric that you want to highlight. Just make sure that you leave about 3/8 of an inch around each wedge because we're going to cut that seam allowance. So make sure you have space for seam allowances between each piece. Also, the corners will need that same seam allowance, so make sure you leave enough room on the corners, especially that sharp point. Next, we're going to trim around each of these wedges and give them the seam allowance that we need. So in this video, I cut all my seam allowances to about 1/4 inch, and it did make it very tricky to fold over. So I would suggest to cut that seam allowance to 3/8 of an inch, just to give you a little more wiggle room as you're folding and pressing. Okay, once you have all of your wedges fused to the back of your fabric, go ahead and order them in your heart shape again. This will help you keep track of all of these little pieces as you remove the paper. Okay, next we're going to fold over all of our seam allowance while leaving our paper still on. So start with the corners and fold each corner in and then press. And these press pretty well and easily, so you don't have to hold them for too long. And then after you have the corners pressed over, fold over your straight edges. Now I have a little stiletto tool that I like to use to hold things in place or fold if I need to. So that's something you can grab if you have one. Okay, as you can see at this point, as this folds over, this first fold is going to get in the way of the second fold. So go ahead and just trim that little extra off, and then you can fold it more easily to make that crease, and there won't be as much bulk in the corner. Now these corners are a little bit finicky, and I don't want you to get hung up on how perfect they are, because they're just not going to be perfect. And the scrappiness of this project is what makes it fun and beautiful, and part of it is the imperfectness of the wonky corners and the bursting angles, and it's just part of the whole look. Once all your creases are made, go ahead and peel off your paper. As you can see, there's still shiny glue on the inside of that fabric. Now we're just going to refold all of our folds and use the edge of your iron to press those little folds down. We're trying to fuse our little edge of fabric to that shiny glue. My iron could have been hotter, I think, and it would have been helpful, but my edges kept popping open, so I found that after I ironed that edge, if I pushed it down right away, then it would just adhere so much better than just pushing with the iron. So I just used the handle side of my stiletto to push it down right after I ironed it, as you can see me doing here. I don't know why this worked, but it did. You could use the handle of scissors, anything that you can push with to kind of get that glue to grab while it's still warm. Now this is a little tedious, I admit, but it's part of the fun, so just stick with it. And then when you get to the point, obviously there's not enough glue to fuse the point well. So I'm going to take a glue stick, just a simple glue stick. If you have a fabric glue stick, fine, but just this Elmer's craft glue stick works too. And if you just add a little bit of glue at that corner point and then fold that over and pinch it, it'll hold real nice and it will be ready to applique. And then whatever little edge of fabric that is hanging over from the front, you can just trim that right off. And you'll always have a folded corner and it won't ever be a perfect point. So then I just put it back in my lineup and start with the next one. Now I promise as you fold each of these little wedges, it will go faster because you'll find little things that make it easier for you, and you can just put on an audiobook or a movie and let yourself get lost in the crafting. Okay, phew, we got that all done. Look how pretty, it's looking so pretty already, even though it's just from the back. Now grab your base fabric square and bring it on over, because we are going to move all of our wedges and place them on our front. We're going to need to find the center of that square, so fold it in half and make a little crease in the center, and then fold it in the opposite direction and crease it again. And that way you'll have a little cross where the center is, and you can use that as a frame of reference for you to put that center of your heart. Now it's not going to be perfect, but that'll give you a kind of a ballpark. Now, starting with the center bottom, place the top of the piece right where that little X comes together. And then you'll notice you're going to take from one side of the heart, but you're going to put it on the opposite side because the whole heart is going to be flipped over. So transfer each of your wedges back to the base fabric and form your heart with the right side facing up. Now it's going to take a little bit of time once you have these all transferred to kind of get it situated just right. Mine is looking a little wonky at first, but you can just adjust it once you have all of them over. Now I have to shift mine just a little. So while the heart is kind of stuck together, go ahead and position it right in the center so that it looks like it's aligned well. You can grab a ruler to just make sure it's in the center and that you have it as even as possible. Then the fun part happens when you get to make your heart burst. So starting with the bottom, pull out every other piece, and then at the top you can kind of stagger them. Just fiddle with it till it kind of looks right to you. Just play and fiddle with it until you get a look that you like. That's what's most important. I'm also looking at the spacing in between the wedges so that kind of looks a little uniform. But just continue to have fun with it, fiddle with it, look away, look back at it, snap a picture, look from a distance until all of the pieces look like you want them to. And then once you have the heart right where you want it, take your iron and just press it down on each of those pieces. Don't shift it back and forth because that might move them out of alignment, but just press down from above and they will grab pretty quickly. Now you have them all fused down and ready to sew, except you'll notice the points didn't fuse. So what I did on a few of them, just to help stabilize them a little bit more, was I took my glue stick and glued down the points. Pins would work here too, but I find that pins, when you're sewing around and around and shifting the fabric so much, it just works so much easier to have some sort of adhesive. Then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and carefully sew around each piece. Now I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from each folded edge. And now the ends kind of swirl around on you just a little bit, I find. So it's a good time to grab your stiletto again and hold it down. Hold the point down in place as you sew right to it. And then I sew right down to the end of the point and even off the point and then back onto it so that I can make sure I sew that point as well as I can. And then just backstitch when you get back to the beginning. And then you just repeat until all of your wedges are stitched down. Okay, there you have it. Look how pretty it is. I just love all of the colors and how scrappy it looks. And here's a little close-up of the center. As you can see, I stitched right down to the end of each one to help hold them intact. I just think it's so pretty. Okay, all that's left for you to do is to put a backing on the pillow and you're done. And there are a few different ways that you can do this. For this one, I just pieced together some different prints and I put a lap zipper, which is now kind of getting all worn out and old, but a lap zipper that just covers the zipper, and I just set it in halfway down the pillow. You could also set in an invisible zipper like this one, and I have a tutorial on my website to teach you how to put in an invisible zipper. And if you did that, then you would just cut the back size the same dimension as the front. Or you can make it like an envelope closure, and I actually have a tutorial about how to do that as well. It's my simple heart envelope pillow tutorial. And you would just cut your front panel square, and then these back panels, you cut a rectangle on each side and then hem each side and overlap them a pretty good distance, and then you just slide your pillow in like a little envelope, and that's how you would finish it if you're looking for a really, really simple no zipper closure. And that's it. I hope you liked this tutorial. Join me at bluesusanmakes.com for more sewing tutorials and inspiration. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel so you can know when the next video comes out. Until next time, happy sewing!